Okay, hello guys, it's Marina and I am back with another video. Today I want to talk about my dark descent into election denialism. Um, I'm being dramatic, of course, because I don't, I feel the way I feel, and it seems like it's become very, very popular for people to demand that you accept the results of the 2020 election, accept that Biden won, and that you have to say that out loud like some kind of bizarre pledging allegiance to the 2020 secure election. I find this weird. And so I want to just talk about some of the things that I feel like, sometimes I just like to talk about things that I haven't heard said that need to get out there. And, I don't see everything. I consume a lot of news, but I don't see all of it, of course. And so when people are constantly asking surrogates or supporters of Trump about him not accepting the results of the 2020 election, etc., I have a question. Like, no one has ever asked, like, how should I put this? I believe that he really believes that it was stolen. I, of course, also believe it was stolen. I'm going to talk about why in a minute, but I believe it was stolen. And so if he really believes that, I guess I wonder, is he supposed to say that he doesn't believe that? One of the things that I've found about the political establishment in the mainstream is that they are really, really angry that they believe that Trump has more influence than they do. What they don't really understand is that he's reflecting what we believe. I don't believe that, well, in fact, I know Trump supporters are not cult. They're not following him. He's following us. And so he's speaking on behalf of something that many, many Americans already believed. And he's saying it. And I think for a lot of people, he's giving them courage to say it and stand on it. Whereas before they would have either just been quiet or they would have allowed themselves, if they did have a platform, to be bullied into saying something else. There are many, many people who I have respected and even some admired, really looked up to for the body of work that they have, whether it's, commentary or anything like that. And I have stopped respecting them because I don't believe that they believe the 2020 election was legitimate and fair and that Biden actually won, but they're saying that anyway. Now, if I thought that they believed that, I will always respect what I think someone truly believes. Even if they're wrong, if I know they're wrong, if I think they're wrong, if I feel like they really believe it, then I respect that. But for reasons that I'm going to get into, I'll just say, the reason that I believe that they're people that are too smart, that are way too good at critical thinking, in my mind, to believe that he won. I don't know how else to put it. Now, they would like you to believe that there was all of these people out there voting against Trump. However, let me talk a little bit about how I descended into election denialism. First and foremost, I like to do my own research, and there's a reason why that terrifies the establishment. Because doing your own research will affect how you think about things that you may have otherwise taken for granted. I voted in every election since I was eligible to vote. Both, general primaries, I always took part and wanted to have my voice heard in that way. I never really even questioned it until sometime between 2016 and 2020. And I won't go into the details of everything that I researched that made me start questioning it, but most of it had to do with things that were going on behind the scenes in Russiagate, all of the different things that we discovered that, people like Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, like they seemed to feel empowered to rig elections, and they spoke about it in a way as if they didn't even think that there was anything wrong with what they were doing. And I felt like if they're willing to do that, well, what more are they willing to do? Now, prior to 2020, I just felt like catching them cheating was sufficient to stop them from cheating. And what I found out in 2020 is that it wasn't enough. However, leading up to 2020, and I spent, in between 2016 or 2017 when Trump took office and 2020, I spent a lot of time trying to spread the truth. People vote for who they vote for. They feel how they feel. But I just felt like there was for me personally, a lot of the votes that I made in the past were because I didn't know the truth. So I wanted to be able to share information that I thought was relevant, that I thought if people knew, that they would vote differently. And I definitely was trying to influence them to make them more conservative because I believe that that's right, but maybe they wouldn't be, So that was kind of how I looked at it. And I actually had written an article, I don't know if that's still up somewhere on a blog or somewhere, where I said everyone's conservative. And I truly believe that. I actually do believe that everybody is conservative. And I think that you have to know the truth. Like, there's a lot of truths that you have to know in order to come into your true self as a conservative. But it starts with understanding human nature and understanding what human nature will do with power and power structures, and how people who are evil, who want to continue to be evil, who want to get away with being evil, will always gravitate to being a part of a power structure that allows them to exploit that. When you understand those kinds of things, when you understand, the way that people handle their own money versus when they just feel like they can have other people's money. When you understand human nature, you are conservative. And human nature is as it is. And human nature doesn't change. Human behaviors and social constructs may change, but human nature, it hasn't really changed. And, 100 years ago, teenagers wanted to have sex, but instead of them having sex outside of marriage, they just got married as teenagers. Human nature, it hasn't changed. So, and that's one example. So, how did I fall into an election denialism? Because I did my own research. I saw that no matter where President Trump went, and this was running up to the 2020 election, crowds of people cheered him. If he came to California, there were people lined up and down the streets that were happy to see him. There was no counter protesters, not really. If people knew he was going to be in town, they would line the streets where he was going to be to cheer him on, leading up to 2020. If he made a statement, made a speech, had a rally, not only were there tens of thousands of people that would show up to see him, but people, would watch his content, the like ratio, the comments, everything that he did, people were supporting it, like overwhelming support. You go to Joe Biden's statements, comments that he made, and there was no one there. Even the number of trolls that were coming into the comments to say something bad about Trump or say something positive about Joe Biden were 1 in a million. Like, they were far and few between. There was no body of support for this man as he was running. So come election day, I'm supposed to believe that he legitimately won over 80 million votes to beat out a man that people would, crawl over deadly viruses to support. Yeah, you're just never going to make me believe that. However, and Donald Trump does talk about this, but I haven't heard him, or most of his surrogates say, do you want us to say that we believe the results of the election, we believe Joe Biden won, even if we don't believe that? This is insane. So you're supposed to bow down and lie in order to protect the appearance of something when that's not the reality? That's what I do believe that that's what they want. I remember this was before 2016. So this was maybe in the year of 2016, maybe 2015 even. And as Donald Trump was criticizing different institutions, they were criticizing him for legitimate criticisms of institutions because they said that he would ruin people's faith in them. Well, we shouldn't have faith in something that is not trustworthy. So these institutions, like if he's calling the fake news, and he's never said the media was the enemy of the people. He said fake news is the enemy of the people, and it is. But people, they misquote him. I'm going to make a separate video about people starting from a false premise and then building other things around it in order to manipulate and brainwash people, because that's what they did, saying that he called the media the enemy of the people. No, he did not. He did not call them that. He said fake news is the enemy of the people, and it is. Fake news is the enemy of the people. I recently had an encounter with Meta AI where it literally spewed like pure propaganda about inflation. It was unbelievable. And I sometimes I actually yell at AI, which is so silly. I said, you're not artificially intelligent. You can't look at facts and come up with conclusions based on that. I'm like, you can only regurgitate scripts. And it was like, yes, you're right. It's important. I was like, your credibility is trash. You have no credibility if you're just going to read back propaganda, things that are not even true. By the way, Meta AI told me that, Donald Trump there was no attempted assassination on July 13th. It was, one day I'm going to make a video about my interactions with AI, because it was like, on the one hand, I asked about the assassination attempt, right? And then I asked a separate question about the testimony or the resignation of Kim Cheadle. And it actually tells me that she resigned in the wake of the assassination attempt. So it was like, it couldn't even analyze its own prior statement. Like, this AI is stupid. Okay, it's not even, it's worse than a search engine, because at least that a search engine has been manipulated for certain results. But it doesn't narrow you down to one or two results. You get a search engine and you may have 1,000 different results that you can, pull through and figure out what you think is true and what you don't. AI gives you this one response that's so eloquently worded that you might be inclined to think that nonsense is true, but it's not. Okay. So I was watching them and I was like, we shouldn't trust these institutions if they're not trustworthy. Now, by the time the 2016 election came along, I had already, for the most part, lost faith in most institutions. I found that even though I would run into and encounter many people who meant well, tried to help, if it was a government agency or something like that, eventually, depending on what I was asking for, and I'm oftentimes coloring outside of the lines because it's rare that I need help with things. I can usually find the information available online or whatever, but sometimes I have to call, sometimes I have to file complaints. And I found that depending on what you're asking for, if they want to ignore the rules and do what they want to do, they will. They cannot be trusted to uphold the law and provide the protections that they offer. So I had already started to lose faith. So having someone like Donald Trump say it was a breath of fresh air for me. So after the 2020 election, I just knew from my own, and a lot of these things I was tracking the likes and dislikes. It's funny that they took the dislikes down. And the reason that they took them down was so you wouldn't know how unpopular some of these people were. I looked at the policies. I don't know any Democrats who support the Democrat policy. I know a few very privileged people who pretended to support open borders as a virtue signal, but they didn't actually support that. Okay, I don't know people who supported abortions up to 9 months. Okay? I don't know people who supported those kinds of things. So what I had found was that over time, the support for their policies had just vanished, as you started to look at the way that cities who were run by Democrats, like how they were doing, people were leaving to go to literal greener pastures in red states and red cities. So I I was inclined to not believe the results of 2020 based on absolute concrete evidence that I had seen, that I was tracking, and the fact that they were trying to hide this from people. Like, why are you trying to hide the number of dislikes? I mean, you can't hide the views, but I also saw various videos where the views would disappear. I'm like, I don't know how a view count on a YouTube video can go backwards, but I've seen it happen. Not on a large scale. That was something that was much more difficult to monitor. But all in all, I could see that these platforms were doing everything that they can, from censoring people, censoring true information, to not allowing criticism of certain people and certain things, that there was no actual organic support. It was all manufactured. So if the support for the candidate and the party is all manufactured, and I know this because I see the evidence of it, you're going to have to give me some counter evidence to convince me of something different. You can't just tell me that, oh, well, my methodology was not good enough. Well, I mean, it's not scientific. Okay. Well, you tell me something scientific that would allow me to think differently. Otherwise, I am going to be denying the results of the election. Well, we get to, everyone saw what happened in 2020. We had the stopping of the counts. We caught them red-handed, double counting and triple counting ballots. We caught them red-handed, bullying and threatening people into certifying elections. We caught them red-handed in so many different things that it's not really that I know what the outcome was. I just don't believe what was reported. And I tend to have a belief of what I think the actual outcome was based on my own research. YouTube is far from being a right-wing platform. However, why is it that people overwhelmingly preferred conservative content? They were liking conservative content in overwhelming numbers. They were disliking liberal content, leftist content in overwhelming numbers. In many cases, just not watching it. You look at the number of subscribers the channel has, and then you compare that to the number of views. Their own subscribers are not watching their content. They're not commenting on their content. They're not sharing their content. So again, that supported my denying the results of the 2020 election. However, there was damage. There was damage done for that. Now, I don't need this to be validated. I don't really care less. I don't care if people think that I'm crazy or don't believe me. I know how to keep my crazy to myself. If I'm never proven right, like proven right where everybody, it's like sometimes like with COVID, I was proven right in my lifetime. Everyone that challenged me on COVID now knows I was right. Some admit it, some just kind of try to go and sidestep around it. But everything that I was telling people, everything I was posting, I was right. And there's many people on the whole COVID issue that are in that same situation. But at the time, we were shamed and ridiculed and sometimes cut off from people. I know that I was right about 2020. That man that no one was interested in, that no one really picked. They didn't pick him. He was selected. He wasn't elected. He wasn't nominated. I mean, I guess if they want to call their process, I don't know. It was ridiculous. No one wanted him. They never wanted him. Same with the current one. So I sank into my denialism and I stayed there. I remember telling people, I was like, it must be a sting operation or something because, this is obviously absurd. The people who didn't know, and I understand because I used to be a person that didn't know. I look back now and I realize that there are many, many elections that probably were not what they appeared. And, I live in California, so I understand now. I remember when I first learned that you didn't have to show any proof of citizenship to vote. I don't even remember when I first knew that. But when I found out, I was like, well, but anybody could say it and they would just register you anyway. So, they'll register anyone. So I knew in California, but I felt like nationwide, I had no idea it was as bad as it was. Just like I had no idea the corruption in the courts was as bad as it was until I experienced it, until I started investigating it, until I started talking to other people. So in my denialism, I was steadfast because I was not going to let someone tell me that I had to believe something different than what I believed with my heart. And I'm always willing to listen to people if they wanted to show me some evidence otherwise, then show it to me and try to persuade me otherwise. But they didn't want to do that. I believe it's because they couldn't, same as COVID. I was banned from social media for COVID postings. I know that the stuff that I was posting was dead on. I knew where my data, most of my data came from the CDC. Even their own data didn't add up. It didn't add up. And I would post it, but I would aggregate it in a way that showed people that they were lying. And I was banned for that. So I wasn't going to let the same people who were trying to convince me that I needed to believe that lie to now believe some new lie. And they're still doing it now. They're still trying to convince people that the lie is the truth when that person is actually believing the truth. I think it's working less and less. Well, the popularity of President Trump has only grown since 2020. And so I continue to be a proud election denier for 2020. I am a proud election denier of 2021, our governor recall in California. A lot of people don't talk about that. Larry Elder won. I believe that with my whole heart. And until someone shows me some evidence otherwise, they literally just reported the numbers that they wanted to report. Gavin Newsom remained in office by fake reporting. And I told my daughter right after the 2020 election, I was like, the media doesn't declare the president. It made it very, very difficult because she's very busy. She works 2 jobs. I'm very proud of her. And the last thing I want to do is burden her with things that I didn't have to worry about when I was that age. I worked very hard. I was, had similar personalities in that. And the things that I know now, I didn't know when I was her age, when I was busy trying to live my life working. It wasn't until I was able to sort of semi-retire and take some time off and start to examine these things. And it was really because I wanted to be of service in my community. That's how I learned how corrupt the system was. And so, I would send her information now and again. We actually had many, many long conversations about COVID. We had long conversations about, the presidential election in 2020, about the riots, Black Lives Matter. We've had those conversations. I doubt that I am the most influential person in her life, but I am an influential person in her life, and she does listen to me. But I know for me, it took me years to learn the things that I know. I guess that's what it means to get older. It took me years, but I try to drop nuggets of wisdom. And I hope that one day, because I threw down the gauntlet when it came to 2020, but I'm not going to rub things in people's faces. Like I've said in other videos, I know how painful it is to have family members that you think are crazy. And I know that happened during COVID for a lot of people. I don't fight or argue with my daughter at all. I share the information that I want to share. Sometimes it will get loud. My family is loud, but it's never in bad spirit or anything like that. I love her. She loves me. We love each other and my family. And, so yeah, I do have some family members that have that glitch out where they're like, I can't talk about this anymore. I just let them do that. I may push back a little bit, but ultimately I let them do that. And I understand what it is. So I have hopefully a lot of time to, push back on it over time. Most people come around. The reality is I don't argue about things if I'm not sure, if I haven't researched it. And I almost always, and I'm going to make more videos about winning every argument. I do have one now. I hope that you will check that out. That if I'm arguing vigorously about something, if I'm having a debate, if I'm trying to present my arguments, it's because I've researched it and I know. And if I start a conversation with someone and I think I am an authority on a particular topic, but they start to sound like they're an authority on the topic, I'm going to solicit information from them and feedback from them, you know. And so I'm always going to be looking to learn from people who know things that I don't. So if I've gotten to the point where I am in a vigorous debate about a position I have, there's very little chance that I'm wrong. Not zero chance, but very little chance. Because when it's a subject that I don't know, I just sit back and listen and learn. I don't debate things that I don't know. You know, and so people think that I'm a know-it-all. I'm not a know-it-all. I know what I know, and there's a whole lot of stuff that I don't know. I don't know it all. And I said, you may feel like I'm right all the time, because I do win a lot of debates, because I only debate when I know. I said, but what you don't understand is that there's all these other things that I never engage on because I actually don't know. I had a friend once that knew real estate really well, and we were trying to work together. And I used to tell him all the time, I'm like, I know legal. He knew real estate. We were trying to marry that together to save some properties, But I would tell him all the time, I'm like, I don't know real estate. I know legal, so I can bring that to the table. But if it came to something legal and he was arguing with me, I'd say, why are you arguing with me on this? I know what I'm talking about. Like, I know what we need to do in order to protect this legally. I'm not trying to do real estate. I don't know that, but I know the legal part. And he would say, you think you know everything? And I'm like, no, you're partnering with me on this because I know legal. I only know legal. I don't know everything. I just know this. And I would always be proven right. And I think it made him feel insecure, maybe. I'm not really sure what the word is, but either way, it bothered him, and it made him lash out and say that I thought that I knew everything. And I was like, well, but I was right, And I would oftentimes start to list all of the things that I yielded on because I didn't know. I wasn't the expert, and I was taking his expertise, and the things that he was expert in, he was expert in. And it was so weird because I'm going to share this last story, and then this video is getting too long, and maybe I'll try to edit it down. But he was explaining, we were working on a house and we were having trouble getting the electricity turned on because we couldn't find the owner. So we were renovating. We knew the person that lived there, couldn't find the owner. And so we're doing some renovations to try to turn it into a house where we could rent out some of the other rooms. He was basically trying to sublet where he was. And so he said, I was going to get a generator. And he's like, get a solar generator. And I was like, I've never heard of that, but I'll look for one. That's what I said. And he's like, yeah, because he's like, you can have it inside, you don't have to have gas. He's like, he starts talking about it. I was like, okay, yeah, that sounds great. I said, I'll go look for a solar generator. At the time, I didn't know how much they cost. I did have a budget, but my plan was to go and find a solar generator. And if I didn't have enough money to get it, then I would have come back to the partners and asked them to help me with that expense. Well, he keeps going. He won't let it go. I was like, I already said, okay, what do you want? He's like, no, a solar generator is much better. It's much better. I was like, okay. I kind of was taken aback. I'm like, what do you want? I already said, okay. Like, what do you want? I said, okay. And so it turned out that it was a great idea. At the time, I didn't know. I'd never heard of a solar generator before, and now I own two, okay, for myself. And I love them, and I'll probably own another, but he was arguing with himself. So that's how I descended into election denialism, and I am going to stay there, regardless of whether or not anyone ever exposes the truth to the point where it can't be denied. Kind of like Russiagate. Like Russiagate cannot be denied that it's a hoax at this point. It was all made up, and we all know that. I want the same thing for 2020, 2021, 2022. And whether I ever get it or not, until I get evidence that shows me that my evidence was bad, that my research was bad, I will continue to be in this place. And you can call it a dark descent. I call it a dark descent because that seems appropriate for where we are right now. But that's how it is. I'll see you in the next one. Please like this video, share and subscribe. I'm going to be doing more relationship videos because it seems like people liked that, even though this is a very small channel. with just about 700 subscribers. I was surprised at how many people watched the video about men and women in leadership roles. And I do believe that that applies to more than just leadership outside of a relationship. So I'm going to be making some relationship videos, even though I'm not married. I hope to be still. And I want to talk about what I think is the way to make that work. And I'm so looking forward to the feedback of people who actually are married and that feel like they have successful marriages, and people who feel like they don't. All right. I'll see you in the next one.